1913, they came up with what was known as the salaried pension plan. And this, again, this plan was in effect for over 70 years. If I did my math right, I think it was until 1991. So that would be 78 years. And what it was your 5-year average salary times 1.45%, which is a decent percent to times it by, times your years of service, net credited service minus any age penalties divided by 12, gave you a monthly annuity. Now keep in mind, this plan was in effect for a very long time. This plan rewarded long years of service. That's what it was all about back in the early 1900s. It's all about putting in your 20, 30, 40 years at the company, and you would be rewarded. It was an old school formula-based plan that really rewarded you the longer and longer you stayed. Now, age penalties were the same as craft, believe it or not, for this particular plan. Under 55 was a 6% haircut per year. So easy. So far, it's been pretty simple. They both had 6% haircuts. You know, non-management, as we go back, had pension band times net credited service. Can't get easier than that. And now the management plans, there's just this 5-year average times 145 times your net credited service. So it seems easy, right? But unfortunately, again, they made a lot of changes we're going to get up to where it gets very, very complicated in the last 20 years, unfortunately. So 1950 to 1960, the goal was attained. Everybody who wanted a phone had a phone. That was AT&T's real goal. If you want a phone, we want to be able to get it to you. And they were able to accomplish that within that decade. Unfortunately, by 74, the Justice Department started getting involved, and they put an antitrust lawsuit out. It lasted over 10 years before it finally settled, and what actually ended up happening is they broke up AT&T, and they said that, you know, it was more of a monopoly, and they created many different companies, but the main ones were known as the Seven Bells, and that was Ameritech, Bell Atlantic, Bell South, Pac Bell, NYNEX, SBC, and US West. Those were the main 7 that were created from this antitrust lawsuit. Now, again, I remember I told you that that original formula was being used forever. But in 1991, they took that SPP for short. If we go back a few, it stood for Salaried Pension Plan. They took this salaried pension plan and they added what's known as a 3+3 to it in 91. First change they made in 78 years. And what that means is added 3 years to your age and added 3 years to your service. And this was designed really to reduce the workforce. They wanted to get rid of some fat in the company, and they figured if they added 3 years of age and 3 years of service, people that were in their early 50s that maybe became service pension eligible, got on the good table, Table A, got rid of some age penalties, they'd want to jump ship, and it actually, it worked. It was a 3+3, so that was the first time they had a change. Now, in 1996, this is a very important year, as it says, they came up with a cash balance plan. And if you were management, this is a very key date that you're going to remember as you do this more and more. But if you were management prior to 3/22/1996, you had what's known as an opening balance, and your cash balance plan was immediately vested. The opening balance was what really counted. They basically gave you a big credit to start the account out if you were a manager before 3/22/96. So a lot of times when we're talking to someone who's management, we say, oh, were you ever craft? Oh, yeah, I served a few years in craft too. And that's very common. They might have served on the non-management side and then were promoted to management. Oh, were you a manager before 96? Oh, yeah, I've been a manager since 87. You know, oh, no, I actually became a manager in 96. Oh, do you remember if it was before March? Oh, no, it was around December. And you know they didn't have an opening balance. So this 3/22/96 is a very key date. So just keep that in mind, and we're going to talk about that opening balance now. So what they actually did, if you were a manager before 3/22/96, they gave you an opening balance in this cash balance plan. And it was SBF times your 12-month average salary from $795 to $696. Now, this is a service factor that they used, the SBF. So they used this factor, service-based factor, times your 12-month average salary from $795 to $696, that's 1 year, added 5% monthly to that, and they actually added the GAT, the 30-year Treasury, as an interest rate, and that was the value of your cash balance pension account when it started. So this opening balance really helped because, you know, they basically opened the balance with this 12-month, let's just use an example. Let's just say your service-based factor was 5 and your 12-month average was 50,000. It would be 0.05, excuse me. So that might be, $2,500. Maybe it was, 15,000. Some people that were making a lot of money might have gotten a $50,000 opening balance. And then they add 5% of your monthly salary every single month from there on out. Now keep in mind, again, this was 1996, 3/22/96. So that being said, in 96, they went to a cash balance plan. Now don't be fooled. The original plan that we talked about, the SPP plan, I'm going back here, the salaried pension plan was also still in effect. So you had both the salary pension plan and the cash balance account, basically both in effect. And they actually started to look at what's going to give you the biggest benefit. They didn't just lock you into the new cash balance plan. They were trying to figure out, well, if you had an opening balance and we put 5% of your monthly salary each month in and we give you a little treasury pop every single month to give you some credit, some interest credits, will the value of this cash balance pension account be worth more than your SPP plan? It could. And if it would be more, then that's what you'd get. If your SPP plan was more, then that's what you would get. So they started to actually have to keep track of all these different types of pensions. Now, in late 1996, remember that was early 96, March of 96, 3/22. I'm going to keep saying that date because it was important. They came out with something called the Accelerated Transition Benefit. And it basically added 38% for most people to their pension. And it's another incentive to leave. This is only 5 years later after the 91 3+3. So what it was, this ATB, Accelerated Transition Benefit, is they took your average pay from 7 of 91 to 6/30 of 96. That was a 5-year period. And they times it by 2%. That's what increased it by 38%. Remember, the last one, the SPP, was 1.45. Just increasing the percent they used in the formula to 2% on average gave you about a 38% pop in your pension. So many managers said almost an extra 40% in my pension. It almost went up. I had 200, now I have 300. I'm out. And so many of them left, and for good reason, because they got a huge pop in their pension. And that was the idea. They wanted to get rid of some of the fat. So that's kind of the second time they did that in a 5-year period. 91 was the first, and then late 96. Now, again, they did something else that was better, too. With 30 years of service, no age penalties on the ATB. And if there was less than 30, then there was reduced age penalties. Remember before it was a 6% on the old plan? The SPP had a 6%. They decided to go, well, if you're 50 to 54, we'll only hit you 2%. If you're age 45 to 49, we'll hit you 4%.